Hello everyone and welcome back to the next episode of the Road to FIDE Master series. This one is the 20th, so quite quickly we got into the 20th episode, very nice. It will be the 5th round of the Irana Varakomska Memorial, in which I got white pieces, this time against another candidate master rated similar to me. So you expect a, let's say, equal game, but I wanted to push for a win. And against e4 my opponent was usually playing French defense, and even though I have some more and more tricks against it nowadays, I decided not to go through with it, and I decided to switch my openings a little bit and go into some Catalan or Neo-Catalan variations. Therefore I started with knight to f3, after which I expected knight f6, c4, e6, g3, d5. So as you can tell, I'm going into the Catalan structures. At this point I did not know what to expect from the opponent, because he had few games in here with few different replies and options. However, in our game he decided to take on c4 immediately, and I knew that at this point I will be happy to take the pawn immediately. I'm not that used to yet to play without it, so for that reason I gave a check, took a pawn, and after a6 move threatening with b5 I played queen b3. So as you can tell already, 3 moves with a queen, it shouldn't be that great, right? But this is the Catalan. It often happens like that, and the thing is that you are just okay, mainly due to the fact that because of this bishop, because of this queen, you maintain quite a lot of pressure on the opponent's position, and he is not that active either, even though I, let's say, wasted 2 tempos too much on the queen. So at this point I knew that my opponent is supposed to play rook b8 in order to go away from the diagonal and then perhaps push b5 and c5 if I will let him do that. And if that's the idea, well, he should go for it, right? Because what he is lacking is the space. However, at this point he was a little bit surprised, I guess, because he spent some time in here already. So I felt like, okay, I surprised him, and he played bishop e7. So a healthy developing normal move, however not going for the space that I was mentioning. So already at this point I knew that perhaps my opponent is not playing it correctly, so how can I play against his choice? I thought about playing a4 immediately, trying to stop b5 forever, and also I tried to think about d4, trying to stop c5, but not forever because c5 is always protected. So I couldn't decide what to do, and if that's the case I usually try to play healthy and normal chess, and I thought that okay, maybe after bishop e7 my opponent will castle anyway, so still I will have one more tempo to think about the situation, so I will castle myself. So I castled, he did that too, and at this point once again I was thinking about what to do. Should I play d4, should I play a4, or some, healthy developing move like knight c3 or rook d1, and I decided to go for the d4 because c5 was the move that I was not expecting to be played, because after rook d1 I have some pressures to the d file already, and b5 is still not possible because I have some knight e5 with discovered attacks, with c6 square being weak, and so on, so on. So I felt like at this point opponent does not have either this move or this move, so really what he has left is to try to play rook b8 and b5 or b6, trying to finish development, but to my slight surprise opponent went with c5 anyway, after which obviously I played rook d1, asking him question what he's going to do. At this point he took a pawn, and to be honest I felt like my position is so good that I can even try taking back with the rook, trying to lift my rook through the fourth rank to the queen side and maybe attack the opponent or something like that, but I felt okay, maybe it's not that needed yet. So instead of that, once again I took a healthy route and took with a knight, activating my knight, opening up my bishop and asking the opponent how is he going to proceed. I felt like he might try to play knight c5 because what he achieved by exchanging here was getting the c5 square for his pieces, and I kind of thought about, okay, maybe he is going for queen b6. However, if you think about the position and his problems, once again I will refer to the space on the queen side. This is the sector that he is supposed to be playing in, and he did not play yet with b pawn, he did not go away yet with the rook from the diagonal, so it's like he is playing on this side of the board but without playing accurately, let's say. So I felt like, okay, my position is better and better, and I felt like after queen b6, queen is kind of misplaced, even though it went away from the d file. I can now try to attack it from the c4 square, which is a perfect placement for my knight. So I decided to play knight to a3, going to c4, once again with the idea of attacking the queen. At this point my opponent had a few choices, but I did not like many of them. He could have tried bishop d7 for sure, just trying to develop the pieces and also trying to then go back to the d8 square since d file is more or less protected now, but still I would perhaps go with the b4 because knight cannot go back to the d7 square anymore. He has to play bishop a4, but after knight b3 I am maintaining the pressure to the knight, I am opening the pressure to the queen, I'm also opening the pressure to the b7 pawn if the knight escapes somewhere, so I felt like I'm basically winning. Computer does not like my position as much because I feel like he has some problems with the fact that my b pawn will be weak and maybe I cannot take those two pawns, but in my thought process I was okay, I took two pawns, so what bad can happen, right? So that was the case. Anyway, because of those reasons my opponent has to play it dynamically, fast, and that's the move e5. So I felt like, okay, my opponent by playing knight c5 and queen b6, he kind of was preparing himself to push e5. This is a very important move, trying to fight for the space in the center this time, not on the queen side, making way for the bishop, making maybe a safe square for the knight, and so on, so on. I still proceeded with knight c4, queen c7, and now I had a very important choice to make. Whether should I play knight f5, trying to hit the bishop, and because of that my knight would be most likely exchanged with the light squared bishop, and we got to more or less this position in which I maintain the bishop pair advantage, the pressure to the e5 square, control over the d file, so I am for sure better. Or I can try to play knight f3 with the idea that I am hitting the pawn immediately and maybe I will be able to grab it. So also one more factor outside of chess was in play during this game, because earlier that day I injured my foot while playing football with the kids, and due to that reason I was not really willing to play a very long game. I wanted to play it fast, I wanted to win convincingly and easy, and therefore perhaps my decision making was not at the spot, because I played knight f3 miscalculating some variations. If I was not injured, let's say, I would perhaps simply go for knight f5 and maintain a big strategic advantage. Instead I went with knight f3 with the hopes of being able to take a pawn. What are the variations now that I've missed and not missed? e4 is the one that you have to calculate at the very beginning, because the pawn goes into the safe square protected by two knights and attacking mine. So what can be wrong about this? Well, the problem is the queen. After bishop f4 you can tell that queen does not have too many squares to go to, c6 being basically the only safe one, and after going to c6 I can hit the queen once again with the other knight. And queen once again does not have many spots, basically e8 or d5 are the only ones. After queen e8 I can simply play knight b6 and bishop b8, getting this rook for myself, and after queen d5 variations are kind of similar, meaning that I can deliver the fork on b6, and after queen escapes take the rook, and even though my opponent can try to create some initiative on the king side, I calculated it all and thought, okay, there is nothing to worry about, I can simply get my knight out of the a8 square, and after some knight g4 move I can even play f3, and if he takes I can take there, making my king okay. So that was what I calculated, and I felt okay, at that point I am just clear rook up, winning the game. So at this point e4 is not possible, and for that reason what else can he play? He can try to place either of the knights on d7, and those were two other options in the game. He opted for knight c to d7, so I will cover knight f to d7. It's not working that well because I can simply try to hit the other bishop, that was my idea, and after knight goes away queen b3 was my other idea, with the point that opponent is finally allowed to play b5. This is the time to do it, but at this point I can jump to a5, trying to still fight for those light squares, and even though I still did not take the e5 pawn, I would perhaps play bishop b2, rook c1, maintain amazing initiative over c and d files, over the biggest diagonals, and so on, so I was kind of happy. Therefore I more or less expected the move knight c to d7, after which I've prepared queen c3. Queen c3, as I've said, making things fast, making things very concrete, once again attacking this pawn. And at this point, my opponent, I knew that perhaps will choose a move like knight e4, trying to hit my queen away from attacking the pawn. And I prepared this crazy looking move, queen d3. Why do I say crazy looking? Because if you consider how many queen moves I've made, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 already. And I am playing here in intention that if he plays like that, I will play even 7th move on e3. So like 7 moves with my queen, even though I could have gone to e3 with like, you know, 2 of them, right? So you can tell, okay, 5 moves just I threw out the window, but those were not really waste of time. At this point, obviously my point is that even though the knight maneuvered to c5, I still maintain the pressure to the e5 pawn, not from the c3 square, but rather e3, but he cannot really still protect it due to the fact that after f6, oh wait, in here not queen e3, queen d5, this was my idea, because now I don't allow f6, and for that reason the pawn is just simply falling and I am getting the material advantage after knight d to c5 at this point, so inviting the other knight to the game. Now I was planning on playing queen e3 because queen surprisingly feels kind of safe in here and I will be getting the pawn anyway. So that was my idea. However, I told you guys that I missed one line and this line was not that obvious. So let's say I was allowed to miss it. So when I was calculating this knight f3, knight cd7, queen c3, knight e4, queen d3 line, I missed the fact that he can simply try to jump back with the knight. Because at this point, when I had queen on c3, I was attacking the pawn on e5. Right now, he goes back and I don't attack it. And the problem is that I cannot now play queen e3 because my knight is hanging. I cannot play any other, let's say, waiting move, like, I don't know, a4, because e4 is coming with the fork to my pieces. And I was kind of trapped, let's say. And because I really wanted to make this happen, and by this I mean taking the e5 pawn, I just simply went back to attack the pawn and asked the opponent, do you really want a draw? And he kind of did, to be honest. He played on e4 kind of immediately. I felt like I don't have any other better option than simply playing back. And in here I had a decision. Should I go for something or should I agree to a draw? And as I've said, due to the non-chess factor, I was happy to end the game rather quickly that day, unfortunately. And also, even though computer still gives me an advantage, I didn't feel like it. I didn't like my alternatives due to the fact that I felt like queen b3 might be the best of them and I didn't even like that. Why? Because I don't maintain the pressure to the pawn, and also he can play rook b8 with the idea of b5, finally getting this b5 move that I was prepared to see like on the move number 8 or 9. Finally on the move number 20 something he would be able to play that. But my problem was that I missed completely the fact that I can simply try to take on e5 and he cannot recapture till the end because after bishop f4 I will be grabbing this rook. So very simple trick I've missed, and because of that I just didn't want to proceed any longer with that game and I agreed to a draw at this point. But actually queen b3 because of this trick would be a nice option because I don't allow him to play either here or here, because at this point I can once again try to take the pawn, this time because of the fact that rook is now not protected. So due to those reasons, if I saw those tactics, perhaps I would try to continue still playing because this move is not working, this move is not working, so I should still maintain my initiative. But as I've told you guys, I was not in the mood, let's say, to continue playing. Therefore I suggested a draw. He obviously accepted because he is the one that needs to defend, and the game ended rather quickly and ended in another draw this tournament. However, I feel like this game was much more interesting than the previous one, so hopefully you think like that too. And with that we can try to make a review. So let's see how it went. Alright, so over 90% for both of us. As you can tell, I was slightly higher evaluated due to the fact that I had a slight advantage throughout all the game. Unfortunately, I couldn't really figure out how to win the game, and that's that. One of my friends, one of the coaches that I was with, told me that, well, in order to win such games, perhaps you have to be like 23 or 2400 rated player. Maybe that's the truth, maybe that's the difference, but the point is that I was unable to do it. But a draw is a draw. I'm very happy with my opening choice because it allowed me to try out new opening in the classical game, and I always like that and appreciate it. And with that, thank you guys for watching. Tomorrow there will be the 6th round, this time with black pieces, and also quite a challenging game, so please subscribe to not miss it out. If you enjoyed this game and my analysis, hit that like button too, and with that, thank you all for watching. We'll see you, bye bye.